Hello, folks. It's Kermit the Frog here. And you know what, kids? I talked Grandpa Ken into reading some more from the Twits. But actually, he got some encouragement. Some people on Facebook said they really enjoyed his reading of the Twits. And I'll let you in a little secret. If you give Grandpa Ken any encouragement, he's going to keep on doing these stories and doing these shows. So just enjoy, kids.
Thank you, Kermit. That is very true. Right now, I'm getting interrupted by my dog, Snuggles here. You probably can't see Snuggles, but she's right by my feet right now. Yes, and I especially want to thank those who write in or leave a comment on Facebook, MySpace, Twitter, any of those things, and say, I'm enjoying the show, Grandpa Ken. Keep doing it, you know. It does my heart good. Because there are basically in this world those who believe and those who don't. And those who believe, you know what I mean. Mrs. Twit goes ballooning down. Mrs. Twit may have been ugly, and she may have been beastly, but she was not stupid. High up there in the sky, she had a bright idea.
If I can get myself some of these balloons, she said to herself, I will stop going up and start to come down.
She began biting through the strings that held the balloons to her wrists and arms and neck and hair. Each time she bit through a string and let the balloon float away, the upward pull got less, and her rate of climb slowed down. When she'd bitten through 20 strings, she stopped going up altogether. She stayed still in the air. She bit through one more string. Very, very slowly she began to float downward. It was a calm day. There was no wind at all, and because of this, Mrs. Twit had gone absolutely straight up. She now began to come absolutely straight down. As she floated gently down, Mrs. Twit's petticoat billowed out like a parachute, showing her long knickers. It was a grand sight on a glorious day, and thousands of birds came flying in from miles around to stare at this extraordinary old woman in the sky. And I hope you can see that. That's a picture of Mrs. Twit coming floating down. Next chapter, Mr. Twit gets a horrid shock. Now remember in this story, this couple, Mr. and Mrs. Twit, they like to play nasty tricks on each other. This seems to be how they get their kicks. Mr. Twit, who thought he'd seen his ugly wife for the last time, was sitting in the garden celebrating with a mug of beer. Silently, Mrs. Twit came floating down. When she was about the height of the house, above Mr. Twit, she suddenly called out at the top of her voice, Here I come, you grisly old grunion! You rotten old turnip! You filthy old frumpet! Mr. Twit jumped as though he'd been stung by a giant wasp. He dropped his beer, he looked up, he gasped, he gaped, he gurgled. A few choking sounds came out of his mouth. Ugh, he said, Arg, oh! I'll get you for this, shouted Mrs. Twit. She was floating right down on top of him. She was purple with rage and slashing the air with her long walking stick, which had somehow managed to hang on. She'd managed to hang on to all the time. I'll swish you to a swazzle, she shouted. I'll swash you to a swizzle. I'll gnash you to a nozzle, and I'll nosh you to a nozzle. And before Mr. Twit had time to run away, this bundle of balloons and petticoats and fiery fury landed right on top of him, lashing out with the stick and cracking him all over his body. So I don't know if you can see it, but Mr. Twit's kind of getting a lick in there with Mrs. Twit's walking stick. Okay, kids, I think I'm going to leave it for there tonight. I might go out for a bike ride yet tonight while it's still light out. See if Harley the Hog has anything to say today. Well, gee, thanks, Grandpa Ken, and I'd like to thank all the viewers out there too who are watching this show on YouTube and other outlets, and you know, we like to hear you kids. We like to know there are a lot of kids that are following Grandpa Ken and me, Harley, and Kermit, and all the special guests we have. So thank you, kids. And we know there's some old people who believe too. We know there's older people who believe, and they're watching it too, and they're enjoying this. We'll let Kermit have the last word.
Oh, yes, there are those who believe, and some of them are probably 60 and 70 years old, too, kids. I'm letting you in on a secret here, but they believe just like you do. Okay, thank you, kids, and we'll see you again.